What's up guys, Rob the Awesome here, and today we're going to take a look at the menacing mashup of heavy melees that the game has to offer, and deciding which is the best and which is the worst. Let's go! Before I start, there's certain things you should know before watching. These guys don't just focus purely on the stats, we also focus on the psychological portion of the weapon as well, and how it affects both the user of the weapon and the victims against it, so keep that in mind while watching. Another thing is that if a weapon isn't listed in this video, then the only reason for that is because this is a reskin of another weapon. End of story. Lastly, I advise people to read the pinned comment at the top of the comment section to understand what these guides are about and what my intentions are when making them. It's important to understand the reasoning for why I do these guides and grasp the bigger picture for past, present, and future best and worst videos. Alright, we good? Here we go. Like always, let's start with the stock fists. These handy fisticuffs are a powerful force to be reckoned with, dealing 65 damage per swing. Although 65 damage is the setting standard for most melee damage, usually is done by a sword or a knife of some kind. That's pretty impressive coming from a man's bare hands. You wouldn't want to get too close to this muscly meathead, or else you'll come face to face with a deadly knockout. Heavy melees are an oddity in terms of weapon usage. When you have a minigun, a shotgun, even a self-healing sandwich in your arsenal, it's hard to determine just what makes a good heavy melee stand out. Your minigun functions as the high damage source for close to long range combat. Your sandwich does all the team support, so what can a pair of fists do? When seeking out a heavy melee and picking one that is top tier, it's all about gapping the weaknesses that heavies often face. Examples of a heavy's weakness include his lack of speed, or his huge hitbox making him an easy damage sponge. All in all, heavy melees work to help make those weaknesses disappear. Extra damage is a nice additive, but is often swept under the rug when you realize just how slow heavy can be. You can't make use of damage if you are just too slow to catch up to anyone. There are a ton of ways for heavy melees to help improve upon the class's weaknesses, making him an even more powerful class to deal with. But for now, we're going to put this weapon right in the middle and go from there. It's one thing to use your bare hands to deal damage to your opponents, but there needs to be some sort of benefit to punching people. Let's take a page out of pugilism with the killing gloves of boxing. On kill, you receive 5 seconds of critical hits across all of your weapons, meaning you can switch to your primary or secondary for massive damage. This opens up a lot of room for flank kills and heavily rewards you for doing it too. However, the downside is that your swing speed is reduced by 20%, taking a bit more time to execute each precise strike. What an interesting way to help improve your arsenal. Instead of focusing on your weaknesses, it makes it so that you are even more powerful than you can ever imagine. 5 seconds of critical hits is no laughing matter. One person's death could mean 10 other people dead in seconds. Indeed, the KGB's ability to mow down opponents with ease is impressive, but unfortunately with the way heavy works around melee damage, the odds of achieving this massive power is slim to none. Face to face, a heavy is too slow to catch up to anybody and finish off a melee kill, so that would mean he would need to flank in order to achieve a realistic kill. Furthermore, the heavy is a big guy. Flanking even a decent team would usually result in his immediate death. What's more is that your swing speed is reduced by 20%. That might not seem like a lot, but in actuality, it can play a big part in the sudden reaction time of enemy players. One massive punch from the heavy and an already slow swing speed, and you've got enough time to react and get away from the second punch. It ends up costing your life in exchange for this massive power, more times than not, making it difficult to see its amazing use. But when it does go well and you destroy a standstill sniper with a KGB, the critical hits are no joke and therefore scary at any range. It's just the journey to get those crits that will often push players back to better options. Because the KGB has a really powerful upside to achieving kills, despite the fact that the heavy melee kills are tough to get in the first place, and that the gloves provide the heavy with some sort of benefit outside of, well, nothing, this weapon goes above the stock fists. They may not be stellar at closing off one of the heavy's crucial weaknesses, but anything is better than getting nothing in return for a near impossible melee kill. Boxing gloves are cool, but you know what's even cooler? Boxing gloves that are on fire, or at the very least have lazily added fire decals on them. Introducing the gloves of running urgently. Who knew that drawing over boxing gloves would completely change the stats of this weapon? When active, your movement speed is increased by 30%, helping with fast rollouts and quick retreats. Now the heavy isn't super slow anymore. What joy! But sadly, it doesn't end there. The downside to the speed increase is that for every second you have the gloves out, you lose 10 of your overall maximum health as collateral. When you take the gloves off, you regain your maximum health at the same rate, giving a sort of risk and reward for using the gloves. Lastly, the holster time between weapon swaps is reduced by 50%, making it slightly difficult to put away in dire situations. These gloves are killer. If there were a real pair of gloves that could make you faster, who wouldn't want to try them on? A 30% speed increase is phenomenal. This will make you go as fast as a pyro, which is pretty darn fast on the battlefield, but the real thing we need to look out for is the max health decrease. This isn't just your average health drain, this is your 300 max HP going down to a health cap of 200 in 10 seconds flat. That's scary to think about. Should you take the risk for using this to begin with? The answer? Absolutely. Losing maximum HP is frightening, but when you take into consideration these two key factors, it all begins to make sense. For starters, you gain your max HP back at the exact same rate. You have control of your health. It will come back as fast as you lose it. Realistically, with how fast you'll be going, you won't need to spend more than 10 seconds to get anywhere. Take it off a couple of seconds before your destination, and it will seem like you didn't even lose anything to begin with. The other key and psychological factor is the maximum HP of the other classes. Quick, what is the next highest max HP without the use of any items? The soldier's 200 HP. When you think about how much time you can spend with the gloves out before being relatively close to the max HP of anyone else on the battlefield, it really doesn't make that big of a deal. You've got loads of time to go from point A to point B. No amount of health loss will realistically and psychologically put you at a disadvantage. Phew, what a relief. But what about the reduced holster speed? This specific stat does sound like a bummer. Not being able to pull out your weapons immediately could be the deciding factor in getting you killed. However, there's an easy way around it. Instead of switching from melee to primary, go from melee to secondary to primary to get rid of the downside completely. It can be mentally tough at first, but if you want the downside to be erased permanently, it's just a step you need to take as a heavy main to make your melee all the better. Because the running reward compared to the risk of losing max HP is far superior in real time, with a holster downside that does not naturally exist to begin with, this weapon goes above the KGB. Being able to exceed your slow speed is a fantastic trait to have as a heavy. The downsides are nothing to sweat over, and you can put your mind at ease knowing just how mighty you are as a heavy main. Those were the last of the boxing gloves. I hope. Time to take a turn for the menacing. With the need for speed, we have the Eviction Notice. When active, you receive a 15% speed increase, making you slightly faster overall. And just like the GRU, there's a price for being faster, losing 5 of your maximum health per second. On hit, you receive an additional speed boost, which makes you thrice as fast with a 15% speed bonus. To top it all off, you swing 40% faster, but have a 60% damage penalty to boot, giving you swift strikes that do 26 damage per swing. Oh boy, another speedster's wet dream, but with the added charm of being able to fight back. However, is having the ability to swing faster worth limiting the speedy upsides? Let's start with the elephant in the room, the 60% damage penalty. Yikes, talk about overkill. You lose out on almost 40 whole damage per swing. At least you have a 40% swing increase, right? Unfortunately, that additional swing speed doesn't make up for any sort of damage. In fact, in a fist fight with any other heavy melee, you effectively lose out on 18 damage every 2 swings. Not a good trade-off. Luckily, heavy melees aren't about being damaging and more about being a utility item. However, the damage add-ons are what's affecting the overall effectiveness of the utility itself. A 50% speed bonus is half of what the GRU can do. However, you only lose out on 5 health per second. Is that worth it? If you measure the same distance out between the Eviction Notice and the GRU, you lose the exact same health but get there twice as slow. Geez, this isn't looking good. But will the extra speed boost on hit be the weapon's saving grace? In fact, if you manage to hit an opponent before escaping, you go slightly faster than the GRU and have the cost for 3 whole seconds. That seems worth it, right? Normally, yes. However, that is far too situational to make use of every single time. The GRU's speed is always there. It's reliable enough to keep getting down each and every time. If there was more benefit to dealing damage and hitting people with heavy's melees, the Eviction Notice would come out on top. However, the damaging capabilities of the Eviction Notice, as lackluster as they are weighing down the speed utilities from their statistic potential. Because the Eviction Notice speed bonus is great, doing what the GRU can do with a safer effect, but doesn't do anything significant in damage or better with speed, this weapon goes below the GRU. It's still a great utility item, and for maps that don't have a lot of ground to cover, the Eviction Notice is perfect. It's situational to say the least, but for when you need to get to places yesterday, the GRU can do things twice as fast for the same practical use as the Eviction Notice. The brass knuckles were pretty cool to say the least, but what if you could turn your fists into giant robot hands? Now your oddly specific dreams can come true with none other than the Fists of Steel. When active, you reduce 40% of all oncoming range damage, making it easier to escape onslaught attacks. Talk about a lifesaver. You can soak up so much damage and still be alive to tell the tale, but it doesn't come without a cost. All melee sources do twice as much damage when the Fists of Steel are active. On top of that, you receive 40% less maximum overheal and 40% less health from healers when active too, making medics less efficient overall. Lastly, the weapon holsters 100% slower than before, taking twice as long to put away. You've just become a certified Russian tank. Being able to soak up 40% of oncoming damage is a huge step up, but will the downsides weigh the seemingly awesome upside down? Before we get into that, let's do the math. If you have the standard 300 HP and can soak up 40% more damage, that brings your theoretical total max HP to a whopping 420 HP. Talk about a nice health increase. That sounds fantastic, especially for a slow-moving heavy, but where do the downsides come into all this? Less effective medic work, an insane holster penalty, and extra melee damage to boot? That sounds awful, but in actuality, these downsides are nothing but a joke. Let's go by them one by one and you'll see exactly what I mean. For starters, the double melee damage. If any enemy is stupid enough to try and go for a melee swing on you with a fist out, all you need to do is switch to your high damage minigun and mow them down. This is a psychological tactic against people that think they can go against your weakness, but in reality, it's a clever setup to get them into high damage range. The extra melee damage downside is a joke. Secondly, the 100% holster penalty on the weapon. That sounds bad, right? But as mentioned in the GRU section, all you need to do is swap from melee to secondary to primary in rapid succession to avoid the downside completely. The 100% holster penalty downside is a joke. Lastly, the less overheal and healing effect from medics is reduced by 40%. Oh, the horror! Hey genius, if a medic is willing to heal you, the overheal now becomes your extra realistic health over the theoretical health you've made for yourself. All you gotta do is switch to another weapon and the downside is cancelled completely. You keep the damage sponge effect while having a nice medic healing you throughout the match. The medic effectiveness penalty is a joke. And that makes all the downsides. The upside is far superior to any of the non-existent downsides and as such makes a fantastic melee to counter the heavy's weakness. And because of this weapon goes above the GRU. Extra speed is nice to have as the heavy, but if you have the ability to block off a lot of oncoming damage, it doesn't matter how fast you are. What matters is that you've got a fantastic utility melee for the heavy that counters a lot of weaknesses, and with no added downside costs, this is definitely a must-have for heavy melees. Each melee just keeps getting better and better, but what can top steel robot fists? In our list of melee weapons for the heavy, we have these big bad bear claws, or as they're better known as, the warrior spirit. When active, you deal 30% more damage, dealing 85 damage per swing. Also, each kill restores 50 of your overall health back, making up for damage taken on your quest for blood. Lastly, for these awesome perks, when you have the claws out, you are 30% more vulnerable to attacks, making it even easier to wipe you out. So let me get this straight. You get more melee damage in exchange for being even more vulnerable? That sounds horrible. Alright, let's just take a step back. Maybe we're missing something that makes this weapon really good. 30% more damage gives you 20 extra damage per swing. You now have the ability to two-shot 150 health classes and save you a couple of seconds of punching. That's not too bad. If you manage to get the kill off, then you receive some of the lost health back to make up for the fact that you're a squishy bear. However, does 50 health back really make up for the 30% damage vulnerability? It is true that it still takes the same amount of shots from any class to kill you, but what's the point of pulling this weapon out? It doesn't matter how much damage you can achieve or what you get on kill, the fact of the matter is that it doesn't help gap any of the heavy's weaknesses. You aren't going to realistically be fast enough to catch up to anybody and finish someone off. You're just too slow to really do anything damage-wise with your melee. Pulling out your melee is more of a hazard than a helping hand with the rest of your arsenal. And frankly, I see no point to wielding this weapon in the first place. Its main purpose is to waste a melee slot, taking up a potential utility item that can benefit your overall heavy gameplay. Because the upsides are realistically useless compared to the insane downside, and the fact being that it's a rather useless melee weapon for the heavy, this weapon goes below the stock fists. You'd have a better chance of getting a melee kill and living to tell the tale afterwards with the stock fist than the squishy bear claws. It's disappointing to see such a strong looking weapon feel weak at the hands of other melee options. Last but certainly not least, the one weapon to truly fear comes in the form of fuzzy mittens. Quake in fear, for we have the Holiday Punch. Not convinced of their deadly nature? Wait till you hear the stats. Every critical hit you land forces your victims to laugh, making them completely stunned for 4 seconds. On top of that, every hit from behind is an automatic critical hit, so be sure to watch your back. You can even force other mitten heavies to immediately laugh on hit, which is super situational to say the least. Lastly, all critical hits do no damage, which is a fair trade-off for completely stunning the enemy. A weapon that functions exactly like stock but requires random critical hits to exceed usefulness? Now I've seen everything. The basic functionality of this weapon works in one of 2 ways, pure luck or tactical flanking. You can either go in hoping for a random crit to save your life or flank an opponent for a one-shot kill. One hit from behind will stun your opponents for a huge chunk of time, making for easy pickings. And the best part? The effects of the stun can go through uber charge as well. Get a hit on a combo from behind or get a lucky random critical hit and you can stop an uber in their tracks, wasting it indefinitely. That's a neat trick, especially when there are no downsides to wielding this weapon whatsoever. No critical hit damage in exchange for a free kill is definitely a fair trade-off, and all that to wield the power of a one-shot kill potential and uber stopping capabilities? Sign me up! Now we know it's better than stock, but where does it rank afterwards? It certainly doesn't compare to the usefulness of extra speed and range damage reduction, so that means it needs to be compared to its damaging counterpart, the KGB. Let's compare the two to see which is more useful. Although the Holiday Punch can get a one-shot kill and stall overcharge, most of it requires a lot of luck in both flanking and being able to land a critical hit to begin with. Sure, you can guarantee the kill, but you don't get much reward afterwards. The KGB, on the other hand, has a slow fire rate, but he's great rewards after the kill. You may not be able to guarantee the kill, but if you can manage to get it, you can get tons more with the critical hit power. Sure, there is a 20% swing speed penalty, but it's only slightly noticeable at best and doesn't make the weapon unusable. But the holiday punch has no downsides. Surely it's better. Unfortunately, no. There is one hidden downside that makes the holiday punch's chances for an instant kill fall short of the mark, and that is jumping. You can't force a victim to laugh when they are in midair. If the enemy is jumping consistently, you won't be able to make anybody laugh anytime soon. The holiday punch can be countered quite easily if the enemy knew of its simple counter, making the KGB a more useful and rewarding melee in the long run. Because the holiday punch can guarantee an instant kill, but is hard to achieve with very little reward afterwards, this weapon goes above the stock fists. The holiday punch is a fine weapon, great in close quarters combat, but against a jumpy opponent or one that doesn't turn his back, it's just a second pair of stock fists with an added gimmick. And those are the best and worst heavy melee weapons. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you want to see more of these types of informational videos, leave a like and subscribe to let me know. Every sub counts and it only takes one click to help out the channel. Also, if we manage to hit 50,000 subscribers, I'll be doing a super duper unusual giveaway. So, if you got the message, be sure to put in all caps POOTIS to let me know. Remember to be awesome, stay awesome, and to have an awesome day. I'm Rob the Awesome, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao for now.
Motherfucker, I'm awesome. No, you're not, dude. Don't lie. I'm awesome. I'm driving around in my mom's ride. I'm awesome. A quarter of my life gone by, and I met all my friends online. Motherfucker, I'm awesome. I will run away from a brawl. I'm awesome. There's no voicemail, nobody calls. I'm awesome. I can't afford to buy 8 balls, and I talk to myself on my Facebook wall. You know my pants said